Mario Kart 64 has 8 playable characters, but they are not created equal. If I had to rank them, it would go Luigi, Mario, Wario, DK, Bowser, Toad, and Peach and Yoshi are the best. This game has 3 weight classes. We will refer to them as lights, middles, and heavies in this video. Fun fact, the game doesn't actually have any code telling a car what weight class it is. They just set up the stats to match each other for each. There are a couple of stats that we'll find out later in the video that kinda break its own weight class rules. But first things first, let's talk about the weight stat. Now, the weight stat is unique because other than Yoshi and Peach, every single character gets a unique value. So, what does weight do? Whenever 2 characters collide with each other, it does a weight comparison. Heavier characters have an easier time knocking away lighter characters, and lighter characters have a harder time knocking away heavy characters. If you hit them really hard, you can even make the light character spin out. Conversely, if you just tap them lightly, then you don't accomplish anything. Because of this, and his big radius, Bowser may be the best battle mode character. Speaking of radius, radius determines the size of your character's bounding box. Wario and Bowser have a slightly bigger bounding box. The bounding box detects collisions, meaning that a bigger bounding box means that you can collect items and hit other characters from a further distance, but it also means that you're more vulnerable to attacks because you have a bigger target on your back. Max speed is a universal speed cap that is about 108 on the tachometer. It is impossible to surpass this speed. Even if you raise other speeds above it, it will cap at max speed. The only way to increase your max speed is to increase the max speed variable directly. CC speed, as the name implies, is the top speed for each CC class including battle. Here they are. As you can see, the lights just have a higher top speed than the other characters. This is only one of many reasons the lightweights are considered overpowered in this game. Unlike max speed, you can exceed the cap of CC speed with various speed increasers like a mushroom, a star, or a mini turbo, though it will decelerate back to the cap afterwards. Fun fact, there is actually a second set of CC speed variables in the code, but they go unused. Ah yes, acceleration. It seems complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. There are 11 variables related to acceleration. Yeah, that's right. 10 of these variables are for your acceleration curve. Think of your 0 to max speed as 10 segments, and each value is how fast you accelerate per segment. If you take a look at the values in the graph, you can see that lights have pretty stupid acceleration. The heavies start kinda bad, but spike near the end and actually have the best high speed acceleration. The middle's acceleration is kinda crap, to be honest. That final value of 0.4 is pretty slow. The other acceleration variable is your triple tap. For casual players of this game, you may not even know what a triple tap is. Well, when you lose your speed from a hazard, you can tap the A button twice, then hold it on the third press, and you will actually accelerate faster. These values represent a multiplier. Heavies are 1.5 times, middles are double, and lights are triple, meaning that lightweights will accelerate 3 times faster with a triple tap, because that's fair. Unfortunately, due to my research, I've learned that standard deceleration and pretty much all mini-turbo related stats are hard-coded values. They are not variables, meaning that we can't really change them unless we were to directly change the source code. These ones are pretty simple. Drift jump is how high you go when you hop at the R button. Well, drift fall is your downwards acceleration, and yes, there is a terminal velocity, which seems to be fixed. So you can get jumps like this, or this, but if you raise your drift fall too much, you get stuck with this. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Changing it makes you fall faster or slower, although it doesn't affect certain fall states. Here's an example of higher and lower gravity. Okay, this one is pretty interesting. Usually in Mario Kart, your drifting is sharper than your steering, but in Mario Kart 64, it's actually the other way around. Steer control takes your base drift angle, which is a stat we will get to later, and multiplies it by the value. So lights have a 28% bonus and heavies have a 15% bonus. If you were to set your steer control to 1, your steering would actually match your base drifting angle. This stat applies while steering and not drifting. The longer you steer for, the more speed you will lose. This stat dictates where it stops. Positive values mean you lose more speed, and negative values mean you lose less speed, meaning the heavies actually have an advantage here. This stat applies after you steer and release the stick. It dictates how fast you recover the speed lost from power loss. Positive values means a higher recovery rate, and negative values are a lower recovery rate, though the difference is barely even noticeable, so the heavies aren't really losing out here. Something to note, this stat does seem to have some interaction with your standard acceleration, because setting your values too high or too low can cause weird stuff like this to happen. Now I will prove to you that steering is sharper than drifting, and to make things fair, the steering character will have a very low power loss value. This one's kinda weird. So it's set to 0 normally, which kinda nullifies the effect. But setting it to a positive value will sorta delay the straightening process, and it will make your steering angle not immediately snap to forwards. If you want to know what that looks like, here's a clip. So this one's kind of funny. The overcar community has been calling this mass, but it's actually just your friction. We also had a stat that we called friction, but as it turns out, that stat is just an unused stat that doesn't do anything. Go figure! The effects that changing this has is kinda weird. I think it's better if I just show you. The first clip has lower friction, and the second clip has higher friction. So, it does several things. Your speed and acceleration seem to change. Certain speed modifications seem to change. Your overall steering and drifting angle seem to change. And I think it even affects your power loss? To be honest, I don't entirely understand how this stat works. I just know that in the code it's used for a bunch of math whenever you're driving around. There are actually many stats that aren't used either because their functionality was removed or because their values were set to 0. If you would like to see a follow-up video where I cover these stats, then please subscribe! There are 15 terrains in Mario Kart 64 that apply to your character's stats. There are technically more, but they're not relevant to this video. We will be using the variables attached to the asphalt terrain today. If you want to learn more about the terrains themselves, I might make a follow-up video about it. These values are some of those unused ones I mentioned earlier that get zeroed out when the race starts. Therefore, not going to be talked about today. These stats are essentially your off-road stats. Increasing these makes you lose additional speed on the terrain. By the way, you'll notice that there's a front and rear stat for these. Anytime a front or rear stat is shown for terrains, that represents your front tires and your rear tires. Though due to an oversight, only one of your two front tires actually counts as a front tire. Your other front tire counts as a rear tire. This makes front power less impactful than rear power. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Raising this value makes your brakes weaker, and making it negative makes it stronger. The vanilla game never uses negative values, but it does accept them. Fun fact, if you weaken your brakes too much, you actually get a bug where you're not able to brake all the way down to 0. Remember when I mentioned your base drifting angle? Yeah, it's terrain-based. Making it positive makes it better, and making it negative makes it worse. This one dictates the rate of change of your current steer or drifting angle. Raising this makes it slower. There are technically some stats related to the items in this game, but I'm gonna leave that for the item video. And with that, that's all the stats explained. Thanks for watching.